I was literally screaming into my pillow on my bed. I just did not understand why we've launched what I thought was the best thing ever. I was buying it. It was like walking into my worst nightmare. Like, it looks horrendous. The thought of cancelling the whole season and pushing it back to 2017 was way better pill for me to swallow than bringing people to this mess. There was no toilet paper. We had a major issue with poisonous caterpillars, some other bug that was biting people. We were having speedboat ambulances come over to the island and take staff to the hospital and giving them like injections in their bum. This lad, he's on a lilo in the sea, just like paddling around with his sunglasses on, he just shouted, "No, Obonjan!" It was just rubble, iron girders with electrical wire sticking out. Water wasn't sorted, the electricity wasn't sorted, the sewage wasn't sorted. And then a lawyer coming over, I said, "Oh, so what do you think?" She went, "Well, you've sold people paradise, but you're bringing them to purgatory."
Welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with Dan Blackledge and the story of Obonjan. In part 1, we saw the vision and the chaos of trying to build it. In part 2, the cracks that were always there start to break open. We go into what happened when you're underfunded, misaligned with your partners, and quietly losing yourself in a project you've staked everything on, while still showing up for press interviews saying everything's fine. We talk about the moment Dan realised the island would have to go. The partnership that fell apart so badly he lost not just a business, but his best friend. And the tarot card reader in a tent on the island who says something so simple, it stayed with him ever since. But we also talk about what the island gave him. The mates who flew in from Leeds and Newcastle, the woman who got him back into the sea, and who is now his wife. And the question he's been sitting with since, what do you build next when you finally know what you're actually building for? We pick up at the point the tide starts to turn. There must have been a point when that transformation did start to happen.
Yeah, this is where credit needs to be given to everyone involved. Like I said, it was all delayed, so I think that's why it was March, and we had to open in July. So we had to do everything. So we had to launch the brand and the marketing in March, while we had to build. So we had to do all the marketing and sales whilst we were still building it, and we were trying to do this from London and Zagreb and the island itself. Logistically, that was challenging as well. So there was there was just tons of problems, like from the outset. And I remember, this is like from my perspective at that time when we launched it, going back to July 2015, when I did the press conference, I was told that this is absolutely Croatian press only. It will not go any further. So it's like, okay, fine. Because we didn't even know what we were going to call it. We didn't have a website. Obviously, we didn't have anything. I went, okay. So I did the press conference anyway. And then Lonely Planet Croatia picked up on it and just published like a sentence. I mean, like two or three sentences, maybe, like a tiny, tiny little piece on their website. And it got brought to our attention. And then I spoke to our PR people for Hideout and Unknown at the time. And they kind of said, oh, like, right, we need to get ahead of this. So we then put out I think it's called a media alert, right? So it wasn't like a full-on press release. Sound Channel, Asian Partners, Obonjan Island, and then Fact Mag picked up on this and published a piece like Hideout and Unknown Festival creators buy their own island, right? Which then went nuts. And this Fact Mag article got picked up by what felt like every publication in the world, because it just went nuts. Like, and that day it was just like ding 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 ding, ding, like it just flew, and we were getting messages and calls and all this sort of stuff, and it just went nuts for about 24 hours, 48 hours, something like that. And then like all these things, then it was yesterday's news, right? So that was, again, one of I'd say the big mistakes is we announced something without having any funnel there. So we had nowhere for any of that reach to go to, like no mailing, like just a one page with a mailing list. That's all you need. We didn't have that, or else people would have signed up for more information. And we were getting all sorts of people just started writing what they wanted. EDM has got a new home, and it was going to be this rave island and this party island, this and that. And I sat there going, like, it isn't, but okay. And this just went by. And then in March when we launched, like this beautiful branding with, DJ Shadow and Forte and Errol Alkan and Anderson Paak and all that, this amazing lineup and all this wellness and music and art and talks and the beautiful, this amazing concept. It was just like, I wouldn't say it was tumbleweed because we got some press, but it wasn't like anything like what had happened a few months before. Nothing like it. but it started to gather a bit of momentum, and people sharing it, and it got a lot of hits because our Kingdom Collective and Bird we had doing the PR, and they both did an amazing job. But I think people didn't really know what it was. So we were getting funny messages. Some people would message going, "Is this a cult?" Because this was 2016 March, right? So a lot of people didn't get putting music and wellness together, which sounds strange now because everyone does it. All the festivals do it. I remember some festival promoters, going to me like, "I've seen you talking about wellness." And I'm going, "Yeah," and they were having none of it. No, you can't mix those two things together. And I was adamant that we could, and so a lot of people thought it looked cool. A lot of people didn't get it. We didn't do any sales for the first 2 weeks. That bit was like tumbleweed. And we used to sell in festivals where you sell loads of tickets to begin with, and we didn't. And we were going, "Why is no one buying this?" And it was a really hard 2 weeks. And I remember literally, I mean, this is going to sound dramatic, but I was literally screaming into my pillow on my bed. It's very, very painful because I just did not understand why we've launched this, what I thought was the best thing ever. And a million other people had told me it was the best thing ever. And all the people that were involved thought it was the best thing ever. We launched it and no one was buying it. Why is no one buying it? And then 2 weeks later, sales started trickling in. And again, in hindsight, like, well, you're not selling a festival ticket, you're selling £1,000 holiday. Where with Hideout, it was still a holiday, but people could just buy £100 ticket. But for this, it was like, well, they couldn't buy £100 ticket because they had to buy accommodation from us. And that required getting mates together, so people had to get their heads around it first, decide whether they wanted to come, then get people to, so it's just a longer lead time. So in that sense, and how we positioned it was that it was this thing that hadn't existed before. Again, instead of positioning it as it's more of a hotel concept with great cultural programming, and that's how I'd do it again if I was to do it again. But we didn't, and it went out like it went out. And but then slowly but surely, people started coming who were quite well known, kind of celeb status people started coming, and their agents would approach us and go like, "Oh, I'm going to organise a party for so and so for their 30th, and can we do something here? And this massive DJ wants to come and do a secret event there." So we started attracting this sort of interest, which to me was like, great, okay. Other people have started booking it anyway, and okay, this might not be going as wrong as I think it is, but sales still weren't where they needed to be. And then that also caused major ructions with the relationship as well, and also the costs that were being incurred. And so whilst all the marketing and sales was happening, I would say, luckily, other people were saying, "What are you on about? That's not lucky." But I would say, luckily, because we were struggling to sell it, what was also happening at the same time is we were struggling to build it. The lineup, let's say the cultural program for the season, was booked eventually for 800 people capacity per day. What we ended up with was about 100 keys, something like that. I think when we opened, let's say something like that. So key being a room and accommodation. So that's like a 2-person bell tent, a 4-person bell tent, or a 2-person safari style lodge, or a 4-person safari style lodge. Like, those were the options. And let's say collectively we had 100. So even if we had sold 800 people throughout the season, we wouldn't have been able to deliver that. We would have had to say to them, "We're sorry, you can't sleep here. We need to cancel your trip." So that's why I said, luckily we'd done that. But on the flip of that, we booked a program for 800 people and got our best moments, I think 200 people. Our quietest moments probably like 50 people. Like a hotel, you sometimes get peaks and troughs, and you have to become really good at tweaking the rates so that you drive sales in the periods where you've not got as many, even throughout the season. Like, that's the goal of a hotel, is to have some sort of level balanced occupancy. So you've not got 150 staff and only 50 guests, right? We didn't know any of that at the time. So yeah, we had issues with selling it in those first few months. And also, it was March. We were asking people to book a summer holiday we were going to launch on the 18th of July was the first date we had in place to launch.
So that was going to be the opening week. And what was that due to look like?
That was the whole season was going to start on the 18th of July. So this is the trouble we had, is the press called it a festival, but it wasn't really a festival because it wasn't this heavily populated program for 3 days or 4 days. It was a more considered, distributed program, but we just viewed it as like one season. So in the season, there would be, for example, we were opening with Dilated Peoples, Matthew Herbert, Manpower, Polizia, Errol Alcan, DJ Shadow, Machine Drum, Don Letts, Saul Williams, and Roy Ayres. So we had all of that booked for the first week from the 18th of July. It was a good lineup, yeah. Shame we didn't do it. So what happened is, slowly but surely, we realised that we probably weren't going to be able to open on the 18th of July. So I think we thought we need to push it back a few days, and started cancelling the first few artists. So, which was really annoying for Alice and me, because you go to loads of trouble curating and booking it, then you've got to go to loads of trouble cancelling them and paying deposits and getting in trouble with agents and all that sort of stuff. But people were pretty cool about it, given, I think, how ambitious the project was.
Yeah.
And we'd make it right. We'd like, oh, can we move certain people? We'd pay deposits, and we'd move them to the following year. We generally, that's what we did. I remember one pivotal moment was, like, I took a couple of people down there after the Hideout in 2016. So we'd done Hideout 2016, and I went to the island with Wilf, who's one of the partners in Hideout, and Brad from Broadwick, and I took them down, and I hadn't been for a while, and I was expecting it to look pretty good, given that we were going to open in a few weeks. And we got off the boat, and you could just hear, like, just jackhammers and saws and drills and, like, banging, and it was like walking into my worst nightmare. I was feeling a bit rough after, like, 5 nights of Hideout as well, so I think I had 3 hours sleep the night before, and then we'd driven down to 3-hour drive to Shivenick, and then got the boat across. So I was already feeling a little bit jaded, and it was very, very hot, and it was just literally like walking into your worst nightmare. I was like, fuck. Anyway, so I just went, yeah, but it's fine, because it's still beautiful, and it's great, and the sea and the trees and the amphitheatre. So I was walking them around, and I was a few steps in front of them all the time, thinking, shit, like, what are we going to do? Like, it looks horrendous. There's no way. But that was one voice, and the other voice was going, was my yeah but voice, like, yeah, but we'll work it out. Anyway, I walked around with them, like, hour and a half or something like that, and then got back to East Harbour, and we're sat, like, surrounded by rubble and iron girders sticking out the floor, and I turned to him and went, so what do you think? and it was a serious question. Wilf just looked at me and went, it's a building site, mate. And I said, yeah, I know. What am I going to do? And Brad kind of went, oh man, like, he said, I don't know if you can make it, man. Like, is there any chance you can push it back to 2017? And I kind of thought, I'd love to do that. That'd be amazing if we could do that. Even though we were so deep into it at that point, it was like the beginning of July. I was like, even though we're so deep in, I was like, the thought of cancelling the whole season and pushing it back to 2017 was way better pill for me to swallow than bringing people to this mess. It was what was going through my mind. And we went back on the boat, and they left, and I was in Shibboleth, so I rang my contact at the mayor's office and said, what are the chances of pushing this back to 2017? And she's like, what? And she just went, no, that's not possible. Just absolutely not. No. And I said, okay, right. So I went to someone else, a lovely lady called Irina, who had a local business. She was so lovely and brilliant. Her and her daughter, we worked loads together. So I went to her as, like, she'll be the voice of reason here. And so I rang her up and was like, Irina, like, this is my thoughts. I've been to the island, like, it's a mess. I don't think we can make it. What do you think? And she went, you've got to. I was like, what? She's like, you've got to do it this year. You need to find a way of doing it. And I was like, right, okay, thanks. It was a lovely conversation. She gave me, like, a brilliant pep talk, and actually made me believe again that we could do it. I went and spoke to everyone, told them my concerns, still saying, look, if there's any way we can move this to 2017. And they just kind of hung up on me and just went, Dan's lost his mind. He thinks we can move it to 2017. So we cracked on, and we just, it's like, well, we could get a move on then, because it just looks like a building site at the minute, and we can't therefore open. And I was like, okay, we agree with that. We'll cancel that first week, but we've got to open on the weekend, 28th of July, and that's where we had DJ Shadow booked. So we've got to open for DJ Shadow, because that's one of the biggest bookings of the season. That felt like a really important one. We've got to open for that. We've sold packages, so I had to do the thing of, like, cancelling people's holidays, speaking to them on the phone, getting loads of grief down the phone. I became really good at that, unfortunately, like, as in good at dealing with people. And actually, you find that If you speak to people personally and tell them the truth, they're really sound about it. They'll 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 give you loads of shit for a bit, and you just take it and don't make any excuses and just go, yeah, I hear you. It's really, really bad. We're really sorry, and explain to them maybe why it's happened and what we can do about it. And then eventually they'll actually appreciate the time. Some of those people came back and hung out with us. It's possible to build even better relationships with people when you've gone through that. But anyway, it's still not a good position to be in. For anyone that's had to do that, they'll know what I mean. So we cancelled that first week, and it was like, God, like all hands on deck for the rest of July. And I honestly, the impossible kind of became possible because everyone just pulled it out the bag somehow. It just went at it like you've never seen a team of people go at it before. So the Croatian partners, and we had this crazy guy called Ivan Christo who was like running around the island, like organizing all the contractors, and went to motivate all of them, let's say, as much as possible to be quicker. We'd go over there and like find people asleep in the toilet. I remember opening the toilet once, and there was just this guy just like, he wasn't using the toilet except for he was sat with his trousers up asleep on the toilet, just having a quick nap. I'm going, right, if this is happening, this is what's happening. So let's motivate the contractors. So credit to the contractors, and the contractors pulled it out of the bag, and there was multiple different contractors. Well, it wasn't just like the sensible thing where you have one contractor who's managing the whole thing. We had like 10 different people doing a million different things, and it was again pure chaos. But it slowly but surely started to come together, and there were certain points in July where we were like, oh, we're going to make it. And then the next day, be like, oh, we're not going to make it. We're going to make it. We're not going to make it, because there was some really big elements that had to be in place that just weren't coming together, like the water supply, like the electricity, like the sewage plant hadn't fully been built yet, because we had to dig this massive, huge crater, like 15 meters deep. It was massive. And that was the sewage treatment plant, major piece of infrastructure, again, that no one cared about unless it wasn't there, and then they would definitely care about it. That wasn't finished because we had praying in these big concrete slabs, concrete it all up, wait for the concrete to. There's all of these sorts of things that just took a lot longer than we thought it would, and that we were told that it would. That month was mad. It was very haphazard. We flew over, like, I don't know the amount, but it was, I'll just say, loads of team members from Leeds, chefs, waiters, bartenders, our events team, like our ops director, and club promoters. I was ringing mates going, we'll pay for your flight, can you come and help? So some mates flew over and just picked up a hammer and just started knocking stuff down that needed to be knocked down, and just like clearing rubble and like picking up litter and all of these sorts of things. Like everyone just grouped together. This was the last 2 weeks before that opening weekend. Monumental effort. I don't care if you work in marketing, or if you're the sustainability manager, or if you're the accountant. Everyone was sweeping, everyone was going crazy, building these little walls out of rocks to try and make it look nicer, and spending thousands of pounds at the plant shop trying to make it look less arid and desolate and like building site. And people were painting things, and it was just mad. At the moment, you sat there going, right, we don't have water. And I'm there thinking, yeah, I'm really glad I spent so much time worrying about having an underwater sculpture park at the island, and trying to make that happen when we didn't have running water on the island. Like, I'm really glad that I spent all that time having meetings and concepting that one out, that we didn't eventually do. But that would have been lovely. We were going to do freediving workshops to this underwater sculpture park. That was one of the things that didn't happen.
If there was a word to describe your state in those few weeks that you're describing, what would that be?
A mixture of things is coming up. First was like actually excitement and anxiety. Like, obviously those two things live right next door to each other anyway. Excitement. I remember just getting up every day, putting on a fresh white t-shirt. Don't know why I always wore a white t-shirt, but I'm wearing one now. It was kind of like my trademark thing. And put on my fresh white t-shirt and just got to it, and that was I remember like sticking on and going, right, today's another day, let's get on with it. And you just got on with it and just did it. So it was excitement, anxiety, determination, hope, optimism, terror, fear, all of those things. At the end of every day, we'd just go, well, that was that day, and we'd have a drink and answer emails, and we'd work into the late night with a glass of wine or a beer and team around us and laptops and stuff, trying to get it all together. It's funny, it's like you look back at these things in fondness. Sometimes it was just mental and pure chaos, but looking back to see how much people came together and what they put up with as well. Like, we didn't have pillows for the staff to sleep. Staff accommodation was a nightmare. There was no toilet paper. People were telling me about this, and I remember we brought a big bag of Haribos and chocolate, and this one girl cried. She just burst into tears because I'd given her Haribo. Bless her. Like, that's how bad it was, and that's how much effort everyone was putting in, and that's how brutal it was that last couple of weeks before we opened. It was pretty crazy. Oh, also, we had a major issue with poisonous caterpillars and some of the bug that was biting people, and they were having a massive allergic reactions to it. So we were having to have RIB speedboat ambulances come over to the island and take staff back to the hospital and giving them like injections in their bum and on the speedboat on the way back to like reduce the swelling in their legs. It was just crazy. So all of this was happening, and that was happening because we'd appointed this company to do a biodiversity study as part of our sustainable development plan. Right, they're slowly but surely getting booted out of the window at every possible turn, much to my dismay. So we'd got this plan, but we hadn't paid for this plan, so we didn't have the plan in our possession. So we didn't know there was poisonous caterpillars on the island, and we didn't know there was these poisonous spiders. At one point, I think it was like 50 contractors had to get taken to hospital because they all got ill off these poisonous caterpillars. And then they got better, and then they came back and cracked on, actually. I suppose that's like the biggest moment where I'd say it went wrong, but not as wrong as it could have gone. So we were all going hell for leather trying to make it happen. And again, back and forth on like, can this happen? So like loads of people like, yeah, we can do it. And I remember this lad called Lake, and he was on a lilo in the sea, just like paddling around with his sunglasses on, and he just shouted, "No Banyan!" And that then like "No Banyan" just became like this joke tagline that everyone would shout, and it was just quite demoralizing. Yeah, that was a mantra. And the other one was like, no, we can do it. Not as catchy as No Banyan. Like, we should have probably come up with a better one, but we didn't. It was sort of divided. There was a load of people that just thought we can do it. Steve being one of those people who you've never seen a man work as hard in your life. Like, honestly, with just building in a frenzy, like building these stone walls out of rocks and just sweep in and pick it. It's like, and everyone was the same, but he was leading by example. Like, it was mad. We carried on this way, and then the construction was still going on, and the tents were all being put up, and they couldn't put up the tents as quickly because it took an amount of time to prepare the plot. All the safari lodges had en suite, so they had to be plumbed and fixed in place. So it wasn't just like sticking up a tent, like you do when you're at a festival. You had to build a thing, and then the actual erection of the wooden frame took time, and then you had to put the canvas over it and then plumb it all in. And so each one of those took an amount of time, so we didn't have enough time to do as many as could have done. And then out the front of some of these lodges was just rubble. Instead of it being this beautiful landscaped area like in the pictures, it was just rubble that people were clearly going to break their ankles on, with like iron girders with electrical wire sticking out where the lamp hadn't been put in place yet. We were walking around going, I don't think we can make this. And the water wasn't sorted, the electricity wasn't sorted, the sewage wasn't sorted. And I was slowly kind of going, yeah, I don't think we can do this. And then I remember Nicola, our lawyer, coming in, and she went for a look round and came to me and I said, "Oh, so what do you think?" She went, "Well, you've sold people paradise, but you're bringing them to purgatory." So that line is forever imprinted on my mind. And then the penny dropped with me, and then I was trying to convince Steve, and he's like, "We can do it," which I admire greatly. That attitude, and I tried several times to convince him we can't, and then started getting a bit of a team to lobby him. And Simon came, and he was our marketing manager at the time, and voice of reason, sensible person. And I was sat down at one of the little bars that we were still half building, and he just looked down at me and just shook his head. He just like shook his head, that head shake where you just go, "Nah." And I went, "Yeah, I know." And he went, "Right, come on then, let's sort it. Like, what do we need to do to pull the plug,
Had you been waiting for that? Is that all it took, was for someone to acknowledge that? Or would you have continued if that hadn't have happened?
It would have... I don't know. I was pretty adamant that it wasn't possible by this point. And then when those people came, they just confirmed what I felt.
Yeah.
So it was more like that. I was like, nah. And Jill, who's there, who programmed all of the wellness stuff from SLC, she was also going like, no, I don't think. And she's a very determined human as well. So and she was helping build and plant and everything. And she's like, nah, I don't think so. And by this point, we had customers for that first weekend in Shibenik. We had the Guardian in Shibenik. We had other members of the press in Shibenik waiting to get the boat across the next morning.
With still at that point no indication that
we hadn't pulled it yet. It was literally the day before. People were in Shibenik, including the press, and our PR team. So like Kingdom Collective, like Nick and Emma and Daisy from Bird and Nina, they were all there, who were all really brilliant at also trying to help people see sense. I think for Steve, it was when Nicola came over and Simon, and then the press. I remember like Nina from Bird, who's very grounded, like calm, and was saying to him, Steve, like you can't bring people here. And I was saying we can't do this. If we bring people here tomorrow and it looks like this, and there's the sewage and the water and the electric, none of these things, these basic human needs are taken care of, will ruin the project forever. We'll be dead. Instantly dead. So we can't do it. And there was there's a big argument. And in the end, I was just like, right, we're just pulling it, and that's just what we're going to do. And we've got the channels to do that, so that's just what we're going to do. We pulled it eventually, and on that day before, and had to tell all the press and the customers to not come the next day. And we had to cancel all the artists. Said, yeah, DJ Shadow, don't fly over here. Whoever else was playing Machine Drum, Royers and Saul Williams were a few days later, and Don Letts. We had to cancel all them. Cancel all the talks. There was loads of people who were doing talks. We had to cancel all of them. We had to speak to customers. We organised a boat party in Shivenik with free booze and like wellness. Like we sent the yoga teacher out on there and put the press and the customers on it. Just gave them a free boat party to try and appease it ever so slightly. Obviously refunded their money. Tried to get them out again where possible. We'd get them out later in the summer. Because we only cancelled the immediate people we had to deal with there in Shibenik and those artists that were on like flights over. But then we had to cancel 10 days. And all the artists and all the customers and all the et cetera for that whole period. So I remember it being a lot. It wasn't just a couple of artists. It was like a big job to actually cancel it all, as well as a big job to actually then do all of the works we needed to do to the island to get it into shape. And so we stopped, and we eventually opened, I think, on the 1st of August. Floating Points Live was one of the first artists to play the amphitheatre.
And talk me through that. You finally get there to the opening, how much of your vision has manifested itself in that way. And what you noticed is people started arriving, how they experienced it, those first feet on the ground.
It's funny, when I was giving this quite a bit of thought yesterday, and I can remember who I booked for my first night at World Headquarters. I can remember exactly what it was like and the nuances of that night and that first night at Foundation. I can really, really remember those experiences. This is still quite hazy because I think it was such a blurred line between not being ready, getting ready, having all those things in place to the point where it was acceptable enough to open, but still so far from the vision that I had in my head that I can't quite remember the first couple of days. I remember the first guests like coming off that first boat because I was there and we greeted them on and we like gave them bottles of water and it was just interesting and exciting to be like, oh, we did it. The boat's come over, it's got the Obonjan sign on the side, and these people are here to have their experience. I think what I was doing after we'd opened was still running around, trying to tidy the place up, trying to plant plants. As people were coming in this side, people were exiting that side who were finishing painting, build. It was like that, like the guests were coming in and we were painting stuff, get out the other side. It was kind of like that. So I think there was still a few days where we were still trying to get on top of how it worked, how people would use it, what was getting served in the restaurant. We were having an argument about whether we should serve fries in the restaurant. Like also, there was all stuff like that going on, as well as walking around going, can't believe we've done it. Like, look at it. Like we called it the Zen Den, the wellness area. It looked beautiful. Like you walked into this open space reception, like foyer area, with our mate Ruby, who was behind the desk, and it all just looked beautiful. And then the masseuses were there, ready to give people massages, and that was just all really serene. And we had this little cart called the Green Bar, which is like this vegan, food store like outside there, and the pool was functioning, and it was just all like sick. Like we did, when we had a party in the forest that night, and where we were testing the sound system still, because we'd only just got the sound system up that day. So it was all like that. It was still all very like the last 10 seconds of changing rooms on the TV, and it was like, and they just about managed to put the thing in place and move the ladders and the tins of paint, and it very much like that. So the paint was still wet, but everyone came, everyone had a great time, everyone was amazed at what it was, which was incredible.
And did it feel like from that point, this is it? The really hard bit is all out the way. Now we just have to.
Not really. I'd like to say yes, but not really. It was all. It was great to get it open, which was, again, we did the impossible and got it open. But what we knew as the owners, the founders, is we knew we didn't have enough money to keep it going, and we needed investment. So we always had that level of stress. Like at a festival, it's really stressful, and you're doing everything to the last minute, and people are like, "Oh, yeah, that's always like that at festivals." Again, this wasn't a festival. We'd done all that, and when we were open, we've gone, well, now we've got to stay open, and we've got to pay all of the contractors that we owe money to, and we've got to pay all the suppliers, we've got to pay these DJs that are coming in, we've got to pay for the marketing. Where's all that coming from? So that was a problem, because we were underfinanced, but we were just, again, like everything, we were just doing it anyway. Another thing that we were tasked with was speaking to investors to try and get cash in from day one. So obviously, when it was open, people could come and see it and be amazed by it, and that attracted those sorts of conversations. And we knew a bit more what we were dealing with, and a bit more of how much we needed, and what you're going to spend it on, and when are we going to get it back. All those critical questions that they ask, we had somewhat had the answers to. So it's very polarizing, because we've created this wonderful thing that people are now experiencing, and the feedback is it's good, and people are amazed by it. Not everyone, I might add, but we can come to that in a bit. So we had this amazing experience that was unfolding, but in the background we had this, we need more money so we can keep this going, and so we can fulfill our obligations to the contract, or else we're going to lose the contract with the, we kind of always had that in the background. And it was always so much pressure was put on the marketing and sales to sell more. And it was just, in hindsight, it was unrealistic to expect anyone to be able to sell what we were selling for that much money in that period of time for the first year. So it was a real struggle year one with numbers and sales. So in the end, we got 2,000 people there in year one across 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So we ran the 1st of August to the second week in September. It was really cool. The bit where that really sticks out for me was Fortet. We got Fortet to come and DJ on the Forest stage, and at the time he was just my all-time favorite artist, and it was so exciting. It was the busiest the island had been, and we'd been open for 10 days, and so everything had found its feet. We dealt a lot with the bugs that were a real problem, and all these sort of teething problems. We were slowly getting into a groove with it all. Everyone was a lot happier and a lot more optimistic, and we sorted out a lot of the staffing issues. There were still problems and everything else, but operationally and stuff, but we sorted out a lot of stuff in that 10 days. And then Fortet was playing on the Forest stage, and it was just like the moment where it all came alive and all came together, and really everyone just felt like, oh, this is happening, this is real, and this is incredible, and it was amazing. And I think the sort of music that he plays, you can imagine you're on this island in the middle of the Adriatic Sea, and you're surrounded by trees, and Fortet's DJ, and it's just like mind-blowing. And I remember a lad coming up to me going, he's breathing life into the island, and you're like, because it was like we were waking up this living thing, this piece of land, this piece of the earth that like rose up out of the sea at some point in history, and it was like we were waking it up energetically. I know that sounds quite spiritual, but that's what it felt like. And it felt like that for everyone. And after that day, the atmosphere among everyone just shifted. It was as if it cleared out some sort of energy and brought in this new energy, and everything felt a bit calmer after that point. Again, someone will listen to this and be like, "Calmer? Are you mental?" Like, not for me. And so, but this is from my perspective, and a lot of the people I could see enjoying themselves from guests coming to stay, to artists, and the team that worked on there, and the founders. I remember Kieran Fortet saying, this is one of my favourite things that happened. He said, "Oh, this is like the Dharma Initiative of Lost," and I was like, "Yes, it's exactly like that. Thank you so much." I was like, "That's brilliant. I'm so pleased you said that." That was like my favourite thing of the whole summer.
The thread that went all the way through from that starting point to the ultimate person recognizing that touch point.
So yeah, that was cool.
So you ran 8 weeks of it.
6
and
in
those
the
8
first,
weeks,
6 in the first
6
year.
in
I
the
think
first
five
year.
or it was maybe 5. Let's say 5 or 6.
People had a good time. People enjoyed it. It looked beautiful and it ran well.
Yeah. So, let's say for the most part, a lot of people just came and thought it looked incredible. Some people didn't get it because some people, I think it was one of those projects where, as kind of cultural brand-led entity, and our struggles with positioning it and explaining what it was, I think some people read the wellness part of it and said it's a wellness island. And some people read the music part of it and thought it was a rave island and a party island. And then so those people each came and thought, "Oh, it's not quite what I thought it was." They had an okay time and they left and they probably wouldn't come back. But the people who did get it and were like, "Oh, this is amazing," because you can go to the forest stage and see Ryan Elliott back to back with Matthew Deere, and then you can get up and do yoga in the morning by the sea, then you can go swim in the sea, then you can get a smoothie and some vegan food from this stall. And we had all these amazing music artists playing all season. Kai Tempest and Loyal Kana, Midland, Anderson Paak, the Free Association Live, which was an amazing gig. So that is incredible. He's incredible. Optimo played on my birthday, just all these amazing guest speakers like Ruby Warrington and Zoe Cormier. His name Charlie Morley. He talked about lucid dreaming, and so we went into all of that kind of like the spiritual side of wellness as well as the music, and it was just fantastic. And then adjacent to that was the unplanned experiences that happened, like people getting a pizza from the pavilion and walking down to congregating on the rocks of West Harbour watching the sunset. And then one night this guy, he brought a hang drum with him. He wasn't programmed to or anything like that. He just brought it with him and he just played hang drum whilst people were eating pizza, drinking beers and watching the sunset. So like moments like that are the moments that people really remember from it as well. Some people just came and just got involved, like brought guitars and just did what they wanted and just kind of created part of the program as well. And also loads of people who came on holiday ended up asking for a job, which we gave them, and then they stayed for the season. Like graphic designer that I know, great guy, came over as club promoter, Zootek. He was like, "Oh, if you got any work, like this is wicked." And we're like, "Yeah, what can you do?" He's like, "I'm a graphic designer." Like, wicked. So he used my computer to do graphic design for the season.
So that 8 weeks happened. It sounded like actually it was a success. People liked it and it had its moment. Then what happened after that? Did it return?
Yeah. I remember the last night of the first season, I think we got a big conga line going or something daft like that. And we were just so happy that we'd done it and we got to the end and we'd made it to the end of the season. Everyone was so happy. Like me and Steve tried to give speeches and stuff. I think I said about 2 words and then started welling up and Steve took over. We had a big staff party afterwards. And the next morning, everyone was just dying. So that was the end of that. And then we kind of packed it all up when eventually went back to the UK and started on the promo. Like we'd captured so much amazing content and we'd had so many press trips, again, organized by our PR guys. We had just loads of pieces of press started to drop and we got, we did bigger brand partnerships with people and we had proof of concept then, so we developed the brand to be a bit more legible, and so people, because we had a better understanding of what it was, so we developed the identity and the communications, the positioning, improved the marketing plan, and we did all of that stuff. We just kind of went from being complete beginners to being people that knew a bit better what they were doing. One of the big pieces that came out that really helped, that I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it, was that Harper's Bazaar They do, I think, an annual thing called 150 top hotels in the world. And we got in that, and we were like number 75. And I honestly, yeah, someone was like adamant that it wasn't a hotel. I was like, okay, right. So we might be more like a hotel than we give ourselves credit for. I couldn't believe it, and I was going, they don't really know what was going on here, but great, I'll take it. So that really helped. And then we had articles in Vice and New York Times and Financial Times and all of them, RA, everyone covered it. We got loads of press, pulled our socks up with the marketing, did a better job on that, better website. And then, sales went a lot better for year two. So we actually, for year two, we programmed less artists because we realized we didn't need to program as much as we did, because what people actually loved doing was just chilling out and eating pizza and having an ice cream and doing some yoga and going to some wellness sessions. So we increased the talks and wellness, and we still had loads of residents that came and played. And to be fair, we still had a really great lineup, and we got Electric Elephant in to come and do Electric Elephant there instead of Tisno. So that was good. Flaming Gods were one of my highlights, and Crangbane we had on Giles Peterson and Roy Ayers in year two. So it was still some really good stuff, but it wasn't as heavily populated as year one. And we got loads more people. So we got 7,000 people show up in year two. And year one was like 5 or 6 weeks. Year two was 8 weeks and 7,000 people. So yeah, year two was cool. It was really good. But again, it was like this polarization of it being amazing and there being some amazing events and people having amazing experiences and like getting engaged on there, and God, like hearing the name of their unborn child whispered into their ear, like that's a true story, that they then named their child that was born. So all this mad stuff happened on there. People made lifelong friendships, lifelong business partnerships. It felt like a real family run thing because we all lived on there. Everyone had complained like hell about staff food because it was often disgusting. And that was one of our big problems. That was a real problem for a lot of people. Some people came and had a crap time, like some people came and had a horrible time and really complained and really wrote scathing reviews, but loads of people came and had the most incredible time. And both were true, you're just like, okay, you've just got to get, and that's just what happened, and both were true. It wasn't so much for you, it was meant for you, and we're sorry that, the marketing didn't quite target the right people enough in those first couple of years. But it was a hard thing to get to grips with, considering that those things didn't naturally at the time go. There wasn't enough use cases, to take inspiration from in that sense. Behind the scenes with us and the partnership, it was just so challenging. And even in the run up to that 2017, and always because of money, because we were not sufficiently financed, it would just caused so many problems. So there was money coming in from sales. It was like, okay, what to do with that money? Because we had development costs to pay for. Now, typically, when someone builds a hotel, you've got a property company that deals with all the development costs, and then you've got an operating company which deals with all the operating costs and the marketing, etc., and sales. And they're two different entities with two different return timeline. Right? So obviously, when you invest in property, your returns are kind of safer but take longer. And with operating, it's less risk because it's not as much money, but it's still some risk. But then your returns are, the money comes in sooner. But we had it all mashed together in one company. So the packages money was coming into the same company the contractor cement bills were coming out of. That's what made it all very, very challenging to keep it all afloat as we went along. So there was a lot of fallouts. Actually, there was a lot of fallouts, and that kind of continued throughout the season behind the scenes. Then that sort of toxic culture at the top seeped through to the team on the ground. There was some really challenging issues with staffing, and then therefore the customer experience was getting diminished, and it was very, very difficult. And like I say, it all goes back to those two core points of like we weren't aligned on our values hierarchy, and we were insufficiently funded. It's like those two things will cripple any business. One of those two things will, let alone two. So we had that in the background. So we were always fighting to deliver the experience that we'd sold to people, which was getting increasingly difficult because we weren't fully in control. When I say we, I mean me and Steve, being the British counterparts that would doing the marketing and the selling, and we were partly to do with the delivering on site. But in year two, we didn't bring over all of the UK staff; we just had all Croatian staff. So we weren't in control of the delivery of certain aspects, like the F&B, which is a main point, and the hotel systems and the accommodation, all of that sort of stuff was out of our control to a degree. That caused quite a lot of issues, and that made it very, very difficult to operate. So, which in being transparent about it, really drained our own personal resources as well. Like it drained our own financial resources personally, and mentally as well. Things were kind of deteriorating like pretty fast. So it was very hard to keep holding it all together with all of that going on in the background, and to still show face and to still do the interviews and to still be selling it to B2B clients for the following year and say everything's great when you knew that at any moment it could go pop, because we owed a lot of money. And that was ultimately what caused us to have to sell it. So we had multiple conversations with investors, and like it, people came because they thought it looked really cool, but when they looked under the bonnet, they saw all those red flags I told you about before, and they shut it and went, it's not for me.
Yeah.
And it was quite a painful process, because when someone comes like that, you think, oh, great, we've solved it. This person's going to do this, and this is the deal. And then they kind of go, oh no, like I've had a look under the hood a bit further now. Now this is the deal, and you go, oh, that's not possible. That changes things so significantly that's not. We can't do that. And then we had a massive European festival operator wanting to buy it. They helped keep it afloat for a bit. And, so we kind of had a lot of help from the universe, I would say. I will say that as funny as that might sound to some people, that's just what I believe. I'm like, there was something, it felt like there was some of the force that was keeping that project afloat somehow. It hung on by a thread for an unreasonable amount of time, like that would again be impossible, and I don't know how, but it just did, and we managed to keep it going. And at the end of 2017, I had to sort of say, look, like I can't do this anymore, because I wasn't personally able to do it anymore financially. I didn't want to keep selling something to people that I knew fine well we couldn't deliver for the next year. So we kind of agreed to go, okay, well, next year let's not book any program, and you guys just take the control of the day-to-day and the programming and the marketing, and I'm not going to have anything to do with that anymore. And neither Steve. And Steve kept more of his involvement in the day-to-day, but like I said, he was never marketing and sales and programming anyway, so kind of that was separated, like, and dished out piecemeal, but the concept was totally different in 2018 to what it was in 2016 and 17. It was just more basic. Some people went, it was a bit of like holiday makers with a few people that thought it was what it was the year before, but it wasn't. So it was a little bit confusing. It stayed open for 2018, but luckily what we had done is contracted some really good private hires for 2018, which again just kept it afloat whilst we negotiated a deal with someone. But for me, it was like the realization that this vision that I had grown very attached to and identified deeply with wasn't going to be realized. So that was, for me, that was the hardest part of it. And at that moment in time, that felt way more significant than the loss of money, even though that was really significant. It felt like the loss of potential and the loss of me and my identity, because I kind of learned a bit more about psychology and culture, and I went into a deep learning mode after I stopped working on Obonjan day to day, to figure out what had happened, to figure out why I was burnt out. Now I've got a word for that. Like, really couldn't. I was one moment where I couldn't get up off my living room floor. I was just like completely fried mentally and physically, and was like, I can't move today. It was crazy. It had taken that much energy to kind of keep it afloat, and like I said, testament to Stephen that he kept going because he could. So he kept going and helped keep it afloat, and did what he needed to do to see it through till we could do a deal, which eventually happened. We eventually sold it to a local operator in like 2020 or 2021. So it's kind of COVID time, because the private hires stopped because we couldn't operate it anymore during COVID. So that's when we sold it to a local operator, even though we'd been negotiating for a couple of years. So yeah, for me, it was the end was kind of after 2017 of that vision. And because I have a word for this now. It's called being an ideologue, and it's where I identify with something so much that you can't imagine any other way of it being. It's like you're so fixated and so hell-bent on something being exactly as you see it that you get into a certain mental state with that thing, and then when that thing breaks and can't be exactly the thing that you wanted to, or even something like that, you break as well, because you've identified so tightly with this thing that's outside of you, that becomes part of your identity. So when that shattered, it was like my identity shattered, because we didn't do Unknown anymore. I'd sold my shares in Canal Mills. I knew I'd have to sell my remaining shares in Hideout, because we'd already sunk all the money from the Hideout sale into Obonjan. So I'd had everything in there. I'd gone absolutely all in. So had Steve, and kind of so had everyone. But for me, everything was in there. So like all of my identity was in this project. So when I came out of it, I was like, well, if I'm not Dan that does Obonjan, what am I? And then so literally the last few years has been working that out, and it's cool. And it's cool because it's good to be able to like go through something as difficult as that, and then have a bit of time, albeit a painful period, to integrate that. And someone that was a great you get me somewhere. Someone who's a great help with all of that was Molly, who's now my wife, because we got together in 2017 on Obonjan, and she was like the person that like got me to go into the water in 2017, because I hadn't been in the sea the whole season in 2016. She got me to go into the water and just like chill me out a little bit and help me get my spirit back, sort of thing. So she helped me with that, and then we got married last year, and we've got 2 kids, so it was 6 and 4. That is a brilliant, beautiful thing that came out of that kind of chaotic whirlwind of a project that kind of shattered my identity. I was able to like rebuild it with my person, and then create some other little people and learn through them.
When you said get into the water, was that the water at Obonjan?
Yeah, the sea.
But this feels something very symbolic about that. The thing that kind of broke you also went a long way to starting to, as you say, sort of get your spirit back.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because it was funny. It was because I was always knew that we were going to lose it. I remember a guy called Lee, who's the most amazing tarot card reader. Whether you believe in that sort of stuff or not, do it with him and you'll believe something. He was incredible. He took me for a rapé ceremony in his tent one day, and I was in bits, and he was just sort of saying like, what are you so worried about? And I said, oh, like about losing all of this. And he said, yeah, but like even when all of this goes, you've still got loads of people that love you. And that's another thing that's kind of imprinted on my mind, because I was like, oh yeah, that's also pretty cool and something to be grateful for, So I held on to that, and that was obviously true. The relationships that came from it were quite a special thing, including my own significant relationship. So in 2020, I think it was, I trained as a coach with Mindful Talent. So not to be a coach, but to be a better leader, because I felt like I had some work to do after that experience. And I ended up getting coaching clients organically. So I've been coaching people, generally people who are also experienced creators. Funnily enough, they're the people I seem to attract, which is nice. So, and I've been doing that and consulting on other people's businesses. So I've kind of spent the last few years helping other people not make the mistakes that I did, and helping them develop personally and professionally, which has been really nice and really rewarding, as well as raising a family. And now I'm actually, funnily enough, which is interesting timing for this podcast, is I feel really ready. Like I've got this burning desire now to do something new that is mine, and that is, experiential, and something that, like, I've always gone at things and gone, what do I want to exist that doesn't? And I'll create that. So I'm at a point where I've kind of formulated that thing for now. Like, what is the thing that doesn't exist that I want to exist? So I'm going to create that. And that's where I'm at now.
I cannot wait to see what that's going to be. Knowing hearing about the vision that was there before. And one thing that struck me as well in listening to this is that often the point where I work with people, and part of the reason for creating this is because when a lot of people do find themselves in crisis, when it's all gone wrong, there's often a lack of support, or people not always knowing how to give that support or check in on them. That may have still been the case for you, but this idea of all your mates and network flying in from Leeds and Newcastle to literally like pick up hammers. I mean, that's clearly a testament to the people that you and Steve are and everyone else on that team, that was what built this, you know, and that brought down to you and your relationships there.
Yeah, and Steve's as well, and the Croatian you know, it's like kind of credit to everyone now. It's like, yeah, we kind of either independently or together built these networks, and it was like all of our mates and like ex-girlfriends and their mates, and you know, it didn't just stop at our mates, it was mates of mates that came over as well as some people that we didn't know that became new friends. And I think it was just because of what we'd done before and how it always brought a lot of people together and like how we operated it. So that when we were doing this thing and we were in trouble, everyone went, cool, we'll come and help. You know, it was like, so it was beautiful to see that.
So being here now today and having relived all of that, and thank you so much for doing that, having retrained, having thought about your own leadership and now looking at something else for the future, if you were to leave that voice note to that you who was going through it at whatever moment stands out the most as being the point where it really for you felt like, actually, this has all gone wrong, what would you say?
It's such a good question. Take it easy is the first thing that I would say. Is take it easy, and things are unfolding as they're meant to be. So even though you've got your vision, which is brilliant, so I probably needed a pat on the back at that moment in time, it's not going to work out exactly like that. And don't get too attached to that outcome. Like that's the key thing, is like, do not get attached to your outcomes. Like, have visions, have goals, have what it looks like in the future, but do not attach to that outcome. Like, you've got to be open and receptive to what's happening in reality, and follow your heart and follow what's in front of you and what's presenting itself to you. Because if you're too fixated on the outcome, you're not living in the present moment. And when you're not present, you're not seeing what's presenting itself to you in that present moment, which if you do that, again, it's easier said than done, because you've got to be certain you can do something without being attached to the outcome. It's hard to do, to decouple those two things, but you need to try, and be as present as possible and just enjoy it. Because I didn't enjoy it enough. Like I said, I didn't go in the sea in 2016, for God's sake. Like, that's mad. You know how nice it is in there? You know, like healing it is in that sea, how much better you would have felt even if 10 seconds, like, nah. Neither did Steve. So just enjoy it. Like, look at what you're creating. Look at how many good things are happening and focus on those things. Like, don't just look at all the bad stuff that's happening. You know, don't ignore that, but don't just focus on that. And don't get, just don't focus on that outcome too much.
I think that's really good advice that anybody could hear in almost any context. Is there anything else that you feel has been unsaid or needs to be said, or anything in particular that surprised you from talking through this that you'd forgotten? Or
Nah, I don't think so. I guess probably the only thing is like, all of the partners fell out with each other so badly, like including me and Steve. Like, I lost a business partner and a best friend. We just don't speak anymore. And I think that like I don't blame anyone else for how they, behaved. There's no like bad blood, if that's the correct term. That I just don't feel any sort of like malice or disregard or anything like that for any of those partners, even though we fell out like as badly as you can possibly fall out with people that you're in business with or that you're best mates with. And it's just like, now you look back and just go, everyone was just trying their best with a really, really, really challenging project. Everyone was just trying their best, no matter what they did. So I do hope that one day we can all get together over one of those nice dinners by the sea in Croatia and laugh about it all.
Thank you to Dan for going there. And for going there with such honesty and such warmth. This one landed differently to the block episode, and I think it will for a lot of people listening. The bit that stayed with me, he ran the whole season of 2016 on that island and never once went in the sea. The thing that was healing everyone else around him, he just didn't let himself. If you're building something right now, whether it's going well or not, maybe that's the thing to take from this one. I'm Angie House. This has all gone wrong. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And the next episode is coming soon.